I blatantly asked why my parents are pretending to care about my birthday. My parents divorced when I was about 6. It was a 50-50 custody split, with my mom wasting no time to get remarried to my stepdad. My stepdad had children already, Alex, Violet, and Mabel. I was relentlessly bullied by them for various things I couldn't control, having a speech impediment, having less expensive clothes, only being able to see my dad on weekends, etc. My mom and stepdad didn't do anything to stop it and essentially told me, kids will be kids, then kept it pushing. My mom would lightly scold Violet and Mabel if they hurt me while playing but wouldn't do anything more. I had to watch as they got far more expensive gifts for birthdays and Christmas and actually what they wanted from their wish list, whilst I got the bare minimum of necessities and would only get something I actually wanted from my dad, but he could only go far due to making 2x less than what my stepdad makes. I appreciated it nonetheless. I didn't even get to properly enjoy my cake or, rather, cupcakes that my mom made to cut down on cost because my siblings ate it before I could get seconds. I was never allowed a party because my friends were too messy and loud. Around age 10, I pretty much stopped expecting them to put effort into my birthday and just kinda let it pass by whenever I was with them. Yesterday was my 18th birthday, and I decided to spend it with my friends, boyfriend, and dad. I was pretty much out all day and came back at around nearly 10 p.m. My mom was waiting for me with my stepdad and pretty much blew up on me for not spending the day with them. Apparently, they prepared a small celebration for me that got wasted because I wasn't there. They were both going off on me for being inconsiderate and ungrateful. In the middle of their little rant I had snapped that they never effing cared about my birthday all these years. Why should this one matter now? They were in shock and that gave me an opportunity to go to my room and sleep. I woke up to texts from my grandparents and aunt saying that I was disrespectful for saying that and ungrateful for anything my mom and stepdad did for me.
Pretending to be asleep saved my life. I'm currently 19 years old, but this happened when I was 10, and it feels like it was just yesterday. It all started on a cold winter Saturday in the year 2013. In my family, we were always accustomed to going to bed early compared to other people. I felt embarrassed about it, so I lied to my friends about what time I went to sleep. For a few months, after my parents put me to bed, would stay awake for another hour or two, chatting with friends on WhatsApp or playing some popular games. Sometimes, my parents would get up to use the bathroom or go to the kitchen for a glass of water, and I needed to quickly turn off my phone and pretend to be asleep. On that night, I was playing a mobile app that I had been addicted to for a while, called Kenneth. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I had been playing for several hours when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Strange, I thought. I don't remember hearing my parents going down to the kitchen. Since I was so engrossed in the game, I realized my father had gone downstairs to get some water. You know that feeling when you can recognize family members by their footsteps? Well, the steps were somewhat heavy, even though they were trying to be quiet, as my father often did. So, I quickly assumed it was my father, turned off the phone, and hid it under the blanket, pretending to be asleep. Just 1 or 2 seconds later, I saw the steps approach. Taking advantage of the darkness, I opened my eyes and saw the silhouette of my father approaching the room, as he usually did. After a few long seconds, he returned to his room. I thought, great, I can play a little more. I listened when he opened the door to his room and went back to sleep. I had the habit of counting to 5 to make sure he couldn't see the light from my phone in his room when I hadn't heard the door close. 1-2-3-4. As I was about to return to my gaming addiction, I heard loud, sharp knocks coming from my parents' room. This made me hesitate to turn my phone back on. They were loud and dry knocks. I didn't know what was going on, but I assumed it was something related to adult matters. My friends had mentioned such things, and I was curious to see what it was really like since they talked about it so much during recess. I decided to sneak a peek since the door wasn't closed. I got out of bed, moving as quietly as possible, and approached my parents' room, crouching and leaning against the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of something to report later. Please, don't judge me. I vividly remember what I saw. I saw the shadow of a large man with what appeared to be a knife, striking what seemed to be 2 soft pillows. I was paralyzed, watching and hearing those dry blows. Instantly, I knew they weren't pillows, they were my parents. I didn't cry or scream, I just took a deep breath. Nothing. I didn't even have the courage to let the air out of my lungs. I was completely frozen. My brain went into some kind of shock, and I snapped back to reality. I heard a voice in my head, something like, "Go back to your room now or you'll die." Without thinking, I obeyed. I returned to my room more cautiously than when I left. I had trouble breathing, and my heart was racing uncontrollably. I stared fixedly at one spot, not thinking about anything. Again, I was frozen. Pretending to be asleep saved my life, part 2, or something like that, and I came back to my senses. I heard my heart beating at a speed I had never felt, not even in my physical education classes. I suppose my instinct told me, go back to your room right now, or you will die. Without thinking, I obeyed. I returned to my room more cautiously than I had left, struggling to breathe, and my heart was racing. I stood there, staring at a fixed point, not thinking about anything, once again, paralyzed. My brain once again released one of those discharges when I heard the heartbeat stop. I shuddered at that moment, feeling that pretending to be asleep was the best option. So I quietly climbed into bed and closed my eyes. I could feel my heart beating at a speed, I repeat, I had never felt before. The beats echoed in my head until I heard the footsteps again. At that moment, I felt my ears sharpen to try to figure out the exact position of the stranger. I noticed that he was heading towards my room. I didn't open my eyes, even though I was facing away from the door, but I felt that he was there, looking at me, standing at the doorway. I wanted to cry and scream, but I couldn't. My most primal instincts took over my body at that moment. After a few long seconds of agony, I heard footsteps going downstairs. I didn't move or open my eyes. As I mentioned, I couldn't. I heard footsteps downstairs, and after no more than a minute, I heard them coming up the stairs again, this time more slowly. I didn't understand why. I assumed he was coming from the living room, based on the steps I had heard. I quickly realized that he was inside my room, not just at the door but inside. I heard the steps behind me, knew that he was there, 3 feet away. I could feel his presence and his breathing, slightly accelerated but calm. I realized he left the room and went to my parents' room, came back, and this time, I noticed his breathing was heavier, as if he was exerting himself. This repeated 2 more times. I remained completely still, not moving, and my brain showed me the layout of the house, and by the footsteps, I knew where the stranger was all the time. I developed powers, obviously caused by adrenaline. It's true what they say, in moments like this, we truly see the human in its purest state. A dense silence filled the room. I was in the room, still feeling his presence, knowing he was watching me, feeling it. I realized he approached me. Again, I heard his breathing right behind me. Suddenly, I heard how he touched or caressed the wall of my room, which had a rough texture, popular in Spain a few years ago. After listening to this sound for a while, rough, I heard him leave the room and go downstairs. I heard him enter the living room and heard nothing more. I stayed motionless, with my eyes closed, not sleeping, not knowing how much time had passed. It had been a long time since I heard any footsteps or any indication that someone else was in the house. With a racing heart, I gathered the courage and slowly opened my eyes. I saw the light blue wall of my room clearly. It was daytime, but the sun had not yet risen. I guessed it was around 7 or 8 in the morning. I stared at the wall with my eyes open for a long time. I didn't want to leave the bed. I didn't want to check if everything had been a dream or if it was real. Everything was strange. By this time, my parents would already be having breakfast and chatting. I gathered courage once more and decided to turn around to see my parents' bodies, completely mutilated, covered in wounds and blood. Their faces were unrecognizable, and their limbs hung by threads of red. This image haunts me to this day. I let out a scream that I had been holding since it all began, and I started to cry. I was terrified, couldn't stop crying, drowning in my own mucus and tears. The bedroom floor was covered in blood. I realized this as I wiped my tears away, in vain because they kept falling. I noticed something hard on the bedsheet. It was my phone, still there, exactly where I had left it. I picked it up and, as I tried to get out of bed, I saw what still traumatizes me and haunts me to this day, a chilling message written on the blue textured wall with my parents' blood. It said, "I know you were awake, the dot."
My fat best friend refuses to wear clothes that fit her. Now she's mad that I called her out. Me and my best friend have been besties for over 2 years. We are the kind that nap together, eat together, share clothes, all that. Anyway, we both are a little over 5 feet tall, and at the time we met both were roughly 125 pounds. so we were skinny and went out a lot and wore skimpy clothes. Fast forward to the past 6 months. We both randomly started gaining weight. It was sudden. The change was drastic and rapid. I've accepted it. I don't mind being in large clothes. But here's the problem, she does mind being large. She still wears her size small clothes, underwear, and bras that don't clip shut. If you are thinking, is it that bad? Yes. It's that bad. She is in such deep denial that we're fat. I prefer the term juicy. She embarrassed me at my 6-year-old's football game last week because she came to this children's football game in a size small black cocktail dress. Was expecting positive attention? If so, she was out of her mind. She looked like a walking sausage. It was so bad my son even commented on it when we got home. He said she looked like the Gob Goo Goo Glob. I don't even know what that is, but I'm certain it couldn't have been a flattering comparison. One day, she texted me and asked if I would sell her my retired rave outfits. Normally, I would have. However, raves were a relic of my skinny days. All of my clothes from back then are small or extra small. I decided to just rip off the band-aid. I told her no. You would look ridiculous. She said I was being mean. I told her that mean and realistic are not the same. I guess that wisdom nugget didn't really resonate with her because she hung up immediately. I figured she would just get over it and we would go back to how things were within the week. I was so wrong. She didn't speak to me for weeks after I shut her fantasy down. I tried to be understanding and see things from her perspective. I know that it was certainly hard for me to accept my changing body, but I just saw it as a fact of life. However, I know body image is a big struggle for a lot of women because we're given this standard of beauty that we feel we need to adhere to. I knew we were still beautiful with our curves, but she just didn't see it that way. My birthday was coming up in a few days. What is the most disturbing thing you caught your parents doing? I walked in on my mom teasing my dad while wearing one of my dresses. I know, it sounds like something out of one of those really bad Netflix movies, but unfortunately for me it's true. I was over at a friend's house for most of the day a few days ago, and I wasn't supposed to be coming home until later in the evening. This is super common for me right now since my friend has a pool and stuff, so I've been at her house a lot since school ended a few weeks ago. Mid-afternoon, we decided to go and just drive around, then we wanted to go shopping. I didn't bring my money with me, so we decided to go by my house to grab some cash on the way to the mall. When we got there, my friend waited in the car because I was only going to be there for a couple of minutes. When I walked into my house though, my parents were on the couch. I don't want to be too overly graphic about what was going on, but my mom was on my dad's lap teasing him, and it was very clear that they were about to make love. They both froze when they saw me, totally expected because they didn't plan on being interrupted at all. I was frozen too. Then, after a couple of seconds I realized my mom was literally wearing one of my favorite dresses. One that I wear all the time. Not even like it's really revealing or anything, just a normal summer dress. We were all looking at each other in shock for a few seconds before my mom just said, "I'm so sorry, sweetie." I ran back out of the house, and was crying by the time I made it to my friend's car. I started explaining to her what I had just seen and she was calming me down, but then my mother came out of the house after me literally still wearing my dress. I told my friend to drive away before she got to the car and we went back to her house. We didn't give her parents any details about what happened, just that I had some family drama. I've been friends with her since way back, so they told me I can sleep at their house for a couple of days until I figure things out. I barely slept that night at all. Every time I closed my eyes it was like I saw it in my head.
I searched my parents' names on the dark web. The videos I found were horrifying. When my friend first introduced me to the dark web, I was amazed at how such an unknown thing could house some of the most illegal things on earth. Up until today, I had only used it for learning how to code and commit small crimes, but after the horrifying videos I just found, I don't think I'll ever use the dark web again. I first met my best friend Rupert when I started my freshman year of high school. My parents had moved us to a new town and I had no friends. We moved because they were paranoid after our neighbor was found murdered in his home. I thought this was weird, moving across the country over that, but I let it go. The reason Rupert and I became friends so quickly was because we both had a shared interest in the internet and everything it had to offer. I was a gaming addict and a Tier 3 Pokimane subscriber, while he was more of a coder and developer. 2 years later we were still best friends, but now we were much older and smarter. Rupert had discovered the dark web and he was obsessed with it. He pretty much spent every hour of the day on it, searching through anything you could imagine. There was nothing wrong with this, but one search he made was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I remember waking up to dozens of text messages from him one morning. This wasn't normal. Rupert wasn't a very social person and it was very hard to get words out of him. I opened my phone to see what he had messaged me. "Dude, Jack, you have to come over right now, this is important. Jack, please wake up. This is urgent. Where are you?" These were only some of the messages, but the rest were very similar, with them all being urgent, and that I needed to go to his house immediately. My parents were both at work still, so I went over to Rupert's house. When I arrived, there were 4 cop cars parked in front of his house, and there were dozens of people in news vans standing out front. I made my way through the crowd, and Rupert's mother told the police to let me inside. I could see tears rolling down her cheeks as she opened the door. "What's going on, Mrs. Gonzalez?" I asked. "Rupert's missing," she said as she started crying. My heart sank. How could this happen? He had just texted me earlier that morning. That was when it hit me. What if he was trying to warn me? What if his text messages were related to his disappearance? Still in shock, I walked up to one of the detectives in the kitchen. Is Rupert going to be okay? I asked. Of course he is. He's going to be just fine. We're going to find him very soon. One of the detectives responded. Something about that response was off. It was like I knew he was wrong. Deep down I had this slight feeling that I wasn't going to see him ever again. I remembered the text messages, however, and pulled out my phone to show it to the detective. He texted me this morning. What if this has something to do with him going missing? I said swiftly. As he began reading them, his expression quickly changed. It was like it got worse. He told me they needed to keep my phone for now to investigate the text messages, and said they would give it back to me later. I stayed around the house for a while, not just because I missed Rupert, but because I wanted to comfort his parents. They cared about me a lot, and it hurt to see them like that. His mother couldn't stop crying. Eventually, however, I went into Rupert's room to see if I could find anything that might give a clue about why he went missing. I searched through everything, but I found nothing. But then I noticed something. Rupert's computer was on, but his monitor was turned off. I looked for the button to turn it on and hit it. As the screen lit up, my heart sank. He was on the dark web. Obviously this was normal, but for some reason he had dozens of different tabs opened. I knew this part wasn't normal, so I closed the door and locked it and began going through them. At first it was all pretty usual for him, but then things started to get weird. He had a tab open that was an article about a murder that had happened several years ago. The article said that it was a woman who was found dead in her apartment. Her body was mutilated, cut up, and covered in acid. I nearly threw up reading it and seeing the horrifying pictures of the crime scene. Not wanting to see it,
I yelled at my pregnant sister-in-law, and told my husband to choose between me and her. I have been married to my husband for 8 years. 2 months ago I had my third miscarriage at 31 weeks. About 4 months ago, my sister-in-law came crying at our doorstep telling us she's pregnant and her boyfriend didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy, and she had nowhere to go. My husband and I openly took her in. For the first few weeks, it was really hard for her. I sat with her for hours, holding her when she cried. It was really bonding for us. But it started going downhill. I take pride in my neat, clean home. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, did not. She would leave her clothes all around the house, leave her dirty dishes wherever, even went as far as leaving her intimacy toys on our living room table. I tried to talk to her directly before I talked to my husband. She immediately started crying and told me she would try to be cleaner. I hugged her, told her it was okay, but this is a clear boundary for me. She told me it wouldn't happen again. But it only got worse. She told me I was expected to do her laundry, dishes, and clean her room daily because she's the pregnant one. Well, I do understand how hard it is being pregnant. I just couldn't allow feeling like a maid in my own home. Not to mention my recent loss of my child. So, I told my husband, but what he told me shocked me. His exact words were, "Honey, she's going through a lot right now, we really should be helping her out. Plus, it might make you feel better to take care of someone who's pregnant." I was angry to say the least. While I don't want to invalidate her pain, my husband and I were also going through our own problems. Either way, we moved on. I did my best to maintain work and the household chores. My husband works from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. so he isn't around to help much. I work full-time from home so it's been super stressful. When I even try to ask for help from my sister-in-law, she always makes excuses. One thing that pushed me over the edge was when I went out to buy my own food that I have actually enjoyed eating after my miscarriage. I wrote my name on it and directly asked my sister-in-law to not eat it. Well, I went to go to my fridge to get it and I saw she freaking ate it. I told my husband and of course he rubbed it into my face that she's pregnant. I need to be less selfish, and life is about sacrifices. I was so upset I told him I felt like he and her were horrible roommates. He didn't take that well. A little while later, my sister-in-law planned a random baby shower party at my house without even telling me. I personally didn't know if I could even be home when this was happening. I felt so hurt that she wouldn't talk to me knowing everything that has happened and that she would just invite random strangers into another person's home before asking. My husband urged me to go, telling me it would permanently affect mine and her relationship. So, I told him I'd go. About halfway through the party my husband and sister-in-law announced that they wanted to show the nursery to everyone. I was confused. Nursery? She was staying that long? What room did she turn into a nursery? They told everyone to head upstairs. That's when it hit me. They were talking about my nursery, for my baby I had just lost. A wave of emotions hit me when I saw everyone in my baby's nursery telling her what a good job they did setting it up. My setup. For my baby, that my body failed to give me. I just lost it. I started sobbing, then that sadness turned into pure rage. I started yelling at my sister-in-law, telling her she's the foulest human for putting me through everything she has for the last few months. Making me feel like I was a maid, or an object for her convenience. Through choked up tears I turned to my husband whose jaw was on the floor. I turned my head to see his entire family just staring at me. I lost it again. Yelling, I looked at my sister-in-law telling her, how dare she use my nursery, for my baby, how dare she think she has the right. What she told me made me fall to my knees sobbing. It's not my fault you couldn't produce a child, why let this go to waste, you're so selfish. My husband tried to pick me up off the floor, but I yelled again, standing to my knees, which were now shaking. I told him to pick between me and her. He had a dumbfounded look on his face. I yelled again, pick, me or her. He couldn't even muster up anything to say. I just looked at him, pure butyrol. I pushed past the crowd of family and ran straight out.
I'm divorcing my husband because he ruined my little sister's birthday. I was invited to my sister's birthday party at a fancy restaurant. Unfortunately, my husband couldn't make it because he claimed he had a business dinner with some clients. It was a big disappointment for my family, especially my sister, who really wanted him to be there for her special day. However, he promised to arrange a dinner at our house as a small compensation. I thought that was very nice of him. When I got there, I couldn't believe my eyes. Guess who was sitting at the table in the corner? Yes, you guessed it, my husband. Not only that, he had a young woman with him and he was kissing her hand. My parents and the other guests also saw him there, so there was no hiding his presence. One of the guests even wanted to go over and make trouble for him, but I asked everyone at the table to stay and just ignore him. But of course the mood wasn't very good, which made me feel incredibly sorry for my sister. I pretended not to see him, and I could see out of the corner of my eye that he didn't see me either. So we sat down at the table and nobody said anything. Through a mirror on the wall I could see him flirting with a lady and they were kissing. It was beyond disgusting. I couldn't hear what he was saying to her, but it seemed to be very charming stuff because she was giggling like a little schoolgirl. On the other hand, considering what she looked like, maybe she was just out of high school. My sister muttered something about knowing the woman he was sitting at the table with, but I'm not sure if it was my imagination. Everyone threw angry looks at him, but I asked the guest to stop that.
What is the cringiest thing you've witnessed a helicopter parent do? My sister is an over-the-top helicopter parent, so much so that my entire family has cut off contact with her. I always joke that new parents get 6 weeks of new parent mania and then they need to chill out. You're sleep deprived, and trying to learn how to be a parent, so everything is a big deal at that moment. She was very much overwhelmed by her first child, which is understandable. However, she never stopped acting like she was a new parent. She set up a ridiculous list of rules that we were all expected to follow unquestionably. Some of which were, do not make direct eye contact with the baby, do not make loud noises in the house, do not ring the doorbell or call the house, unless she had given you a specific time to call. These rules got more bananas as the child got older and she had another child. The rules were just weird. 4. Even though it was one child's birthday, both must be given the exact same gift. There is a 5-year age difference between her kids and when they were little. This made zero sense to me and it still doesn't. 5. The kids were not allowed to open their own gifts. They had to sit in the basement, their mother opened the gifts for them, and she would decide if they could have it. 6. Under no circumstances were the kids allowed to attend parties where there would be swimming, as she refused to let them learn how to swim. I should add that my sister was the captain of her high school swim team. 7. They were forbidden to learn how to ride bicycles or scooters. 8. The kids must have the same haircuts and dress alike every day. My sister honestly thinks that 2 teenage girls want to be dressed alike every day of their lives. Oh yeah, she insisted that her oldest daughter be held back from kindergarten twice just so her kids would be in school longer together, because who doesn't want to graduate from high school at 203.9? When they attended holiday family dinners, we would be instructed to provide her kids with a specific brand of chicken nuggets and fries. If you bought any other brand, you were being disrespectful. 10. We could not communicate with the kids via text or email. She has an app on her phone that monitors what apps they use and she reads every text and email that they get. She will even reply on their behalf. She even went so far as to get a job in their school as a lunch lady. She eventually got fired as she would discipline children whom she felt were being mean to her kids, as well as insisting that she had to sit with her kids at lunch. This behavior just got more and more strict and controlling as they got older. She has stated that she never wants them to be independent of her and never leave her. We all just got sick of it, so we leave her alone. Her kids are young adults now and are afraid of everything because their mom taught them that they can't do anything without her. It's really sad. They won't even speak to us at family events unless she gives her permission, which is rare. So we'll ask them questions and they'll whisper their answers to their mother and she speaks for them.